Good day, we're from Ukraine. My name is Kostyantin Bigus. You might have seen a movie, Konstantin, with Keanu Reeves fighting scum. And for the last months, we both pretty much doing the same job. As you may notice, my name matched the channel name. But I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who was born 4 years later than him, had to wear hand-me-downs and was forced to listen to his jokes. You guessed right, I'm his brother. And while Dennis is actively participating in protecting Kyiv, besides other stuff that I do as my passion project, I'll be protecting your brain and soul from the direct impact of Russian state media. In my blog pilot called From Russia Was What? Now, to do this pilot on this channel, I had a few requests from a team. First of all, Dennis sends his regards and appreciation for all the donation you guys give. These donations help a lot our military and his division specifically. If you're not subscribing to this channel, come on, just subscribe it and share it among your friends. First of all, I'm not a journalist. I'm a tech entrepreneur. Well, I used to be, because now all my effort is dedicated to one thing only: getting the fucking Russian army out of my beautiful country. As many people nowadays, I'm a volunteer. I try to help our military with whatever they need. I assist in evacuating people from attacked cities, and, as everyone else, I hide in a bomb shelter on a regular basis. So, what is this blog about? Being able to speak not only Ukrainian, but Russian and more or less English, I want to give you a safe dive into the ocean of Russian state media. I'll have to tell you up front that I have a biased opinion because I'm Ukrainian, in Ukraine, and Russia has invaded my country. But thanks to Russian propaganda, you don't really need to be Ukrainian in order to be shocked, confused, and sick to your own stomach from reading their news. So, let's start from the beginning. I'm sure many of you, citizens of a hopefully free world, were at least to say surprised after Putin and his buddies mentioned multiple times that they have no plans to invade Ukraine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has denied any intention to invade.
The Kremlin insists they will not start a war with Ukraine, but the U.S. says Russia is in a position to invade.
Do we want it? War or not? Of course not.
But eventually did it at 4 a.m. without any provocation by sending missiles and troops. The reason for this lie is that he doesn't really care what the international community thinks of him. He really only cares about his own status in Russia. And luckily for him, a bunch of people there support him, but not without the help of a good old-fashioned propaganda. Now, I want to be completely serious for a second. I truly believe that if you're an adult and a citizen of any country, you are responsible for what your country does. It is your own job to develop critical thinking and question what anyone tells you, especially your own government. You cannot just distance yourself with the stuff like, I don't know, what can I do? Politics is not the area of my interest. Well, I guess you can.
Мы же ничего не сделали.
Я считаю, мы тут ни при чем.
Я стараюсь, если честно, не вникать, потому что мне от этого становится грустно.
Но мне на самом деле как-то все равно. Это не наша, как это называется, спецоперация. Мы в этом не виноваты.
But you better remember that if your government does a horrible or shitty thing, at the end of the day, general public just like you will be one paying and suffering. So, just take my advice. Use this Russia as a case and step up whenever you have a chance. Coming back to Putin. In order to make sure that his nation is allied with the party decision, they brainwash not only adults, but kids. And as a sure disclaimer, let me say that I feel sorry for any kid involved in propaganda. It's just horrible. Only in case of kids, I can truly accept it's not their full opinion. So as example of this horrible thing, early this March, every school in Russia had to take mandatory class called Peace Protector. Kids from 7th to 11th grade were forced to listen why the liberation mission in Ukraine is a necessity. The Ministry of Enlightenment, that's their exact translation of their Ministry of Education, has provided multiple playbooks on how to run this class. And they suggested to have Q&A format with kids. In order to ease this process, guess what they did? They provided both things, questions and answers. In this video, I'll walk you through some key Q&As and provide my personal enlightenment feedback. Since these are supposed to be questions from kids and answers from KGB, I suggest we try a little bit of a role-playing.
Why did Russia recognize Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic as independent republics? Isn't this a direct interference with the affairs of another country?
No, kids. People in these Ukrainian states have freely voted to create independent republics after the armed coup in Ukraine. In order to start the liberation operation of Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, they first had to be recognized as independent states. Both republics signed Treaty of Friendship with the Russian Federation and officially asked Russia for help. Therefore, in this case, we do not interfere in the affairs of another country, but simply respond to their request to help defend our right to life and a peaceful future.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
8 years ago, it was a coup in Ukraine that started war in Donbass, and we must protect Russians. This quote is one of the cornerstones of Russian propaganda. The coup name is a revolution of dignity. Why did it start it, you might ask? To put it simply, for two reasons. One is the major political one, even geopolitical. And a second is very typical for a pro-Russian regime. The major political one was that back in 2013, our ex-president Yanukovych and his government has suddenly declined to sign European Integration Association document. That was considered as a major dick move. So, a group of students go and protest, as in any civil society. And here we move to the second reason. What do you think was the response of Yanukovych, the Russian puppet ruler of Ukraine at the time, to kick the shit out of those students for standing their rights? And next day, more people come and more people protest against this violent decision. This whole thing escalates into 3 months of a fight against the government that's so brutal to its own people. Hundreds of thousands of people protest. Over the 100 were killed by the police. Yanukovych and some of his cabinet members leave the country and find their home in Russia. The Russian Federation quickly realized that their Muppet government is done. And being the Russian Federation, they start spreading propaganda at the eastern part of Ukraine. Crazy stories, like Nazis killing kids because of the Russian language. Ukraine is taken by Bandera's regime. As a second step, which is much worse, they send unmarked troops to Crimea and the eastern part of Ukraine. They provide a bunch of weaponry to the local so-called rebels. It was proved multiple times that from the day one, those were simply Russian military and some hired mercenaries. That's when the war against Ukraine actually started, forcing millions of people to leave their homes and move to other parts of Ukraine. After the occupation, Russian regime has created local governments and announced referendums in order to give them the facade of legitimacy. They announced that Crimea, with a Russian military base, is now part of Russia, and eastern parts of Ukraine are now independent republic that have zero recognition until this day. Oh, except Russia, by the way. So, yes, kids, Russia has directly interfered with the affairs of another country and started horrible war with Ukraine 8 years back.
Is this a war against Ukraine? Could we avoid it?
There is no war against Ukraine. This is a special peacemaking operation. The objective is to curb nationalists that harass Russian-speaking population and demilitarize Ukraine. At the same time, we don't plan to occupy Ukrainians' territories, and we are not going to force anyone with anything.
Nationalist and language cards are getting played for years now by Russia. Interesting that the main battleground for the freedom of Russian language is actually not in Ukraine, it's in Russia. Because, well, we don't have this problem. There is no restrictions or limitations on using Russian language in Ukraine. For example, Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine, that has been heavily airstriked during these months by Russia, was primarily Russian-speaking. I'm emphasizing was because millions of people will never forget this Russian peacemaking war and probably gladly will switch to Ukrainian language. These Russian orcs has damaged and destroyed more than 1,000 civil buildings in Kharkiv. That is why this close-the-sky demand from Ukraine is so goddamn important. The nationalist/fascist horror story is also absurd. Not to mention Zelensky quote, "I have a Jewish blood, I'm the president of this country, no one asks about that." But in order to be more specific and actually serious about that, let me read you the actual definition of the word fascist by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Fascist, a political philosophy, movement, or regime that excels nation and often race above the individual and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by dictatorial leader, severe economy and social regimentation, and foreseeable suppression of opposition. Does this remind you of anyone? So kids, this is a very open and brutal war against Ukrainian people that speak many languages, including Russian.
What does the militarist mean? So the civil population of Ukraine is safe?
The meaning of the word demilitarization is to neutralize the military threat of the Ukrainian authorities. Since 2014, Ukraine has been actively pumped with weapons, military equipment and missiles. To prevent this, the President of Russian Federation set as a goal to the military operation the demilitarization and disarmament of the Kiev authorities, including outright nationalists. Russia does not and will not inflict strikes on civilian subjects, residential buildings, and civilians. Nobody need victims. Nobody need victims. Nobody need victims.
Покажите этому путинскому вот эти глаза, вот этого ребенка и плачущих врачей. Чтобы он сдох.
How long will hostilities last?
Believe me, everyone hopes that the operation will be quick and efficient. We have very good, competent, professional army that acts effectively and protects civil people. But it will be very suitable and human if the Ukrainian military calmly surrenders and gives up their weapons.
Unfortunately, multiple sources confirm that not only Russia, but even some officials from Europe and the US were actually projecting that Ukraine will fall in the first 48 to 72 hours. It's been months now. And we not only held up, we very successfully counteroffense. Russia has lost more troops within the first 4 days of their invasion in Ukraine than in the first Chechen war. This is the stat of their losses up to this day. The bottom line is very simple. We haven't gave up then, we will not give up now. Today, Ukraine holds back a huge army led by a crazy dictator. no one guarantees that those bombs that fall on the heads of people of Kharkiv, Mariupol, Chernihiv, Kyiv, and other cities of Ukraine will not fall on the head of European citizens. So, what can you do to help us in this very difficult fight? First and obvious, share this video so more people could be aware on what's really happening and be aware of propaganda. Second, request your government to assist in closing the sky of Ukraine. Our army is super strong, but Russians are heavily airstrike all our cities on a daily basis. Since the start of this war, hundreds of kids and thousands of civilians were killed. Your tweets, posts, and comments spread awareness and pressure governments to take the action. So please, help. Third, help us financially. Not us directly. We have multiple different organizations, but one that I want to mention is the official account for military aid in the National Bank of Ukraine. You will find that link under the video. Finally, this blog is not my main activity these days, but I promise you I'll do my best in digging this landscape of Russian crazy propaganda and will be highlighting the stuff that shocked me the most. If you have faced some examples of Russian propaganda in your own country, let us know. If you want to ask me directly, well, hit a comment or DM me. And yeah, this is my first blog on YouTube ever, so I would really appreciate for your feedback. Don't worry, I do startups, so I can take criticism. Slava Ukraini!